I am Rafa Benitez. You are watching the Redmen TV.
Hello, welcome to the Redmen TV. We've got two very special shows for you because this is now available in stores. Liverpool, the European Quest, by the people who brought you World Soccer Magazine. We've got Simon Caney in here, who's the editor. And we're going to be, first and foremost, we're going to be discussing the greatest Liverpool managers of all time. And then in the second video, we're going to come on to discuss what Jurgen Klopp has to do as Liverpool boss to catapult the Reds back into a platform that's going to see them in the future iteration of the Bookazine. So first and foremost, I mean, look, it's a massive conversation. We'll see how well we do it justice. Yeah. Liverpool have had some great managers over the years. Simon, you've had to trawl through the archives, which makes it sound like it's a difficult thing. I imagine it's an amazing
beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to do.
Where do you stand on it? There's an obvious case to be made for the likes of Bill Shankly, for Bob Paisley. Should we look any further than those two?
I mean, I would say probably not. And I think, you know, Shankly is the name that immediately springs to mind because he created the modern Liverpool, you would say, with the boot room, and he came in, and I think he came in with a fearlessness that almost like there's nothing to lose here. Yeah. When he took over, and he brought his own philosophy with him, this winning mentality, and, you know, very quickly created a team that then became an all-conquering team. But then you kind of look at Bob Paisley as well, and you think, you know, he had the hardest job in the world to succeed someone like Bill Shankly. And we've seen in umpteen clubs that really isn't a very easy thing to do. And it almost always ends in failure, almost always. And yet Paisley was able to not only take it on, but take it on and have even more success.
Well, it's incredible when you consider, you know, the difference Paisley and Shankly in terms of personalities, night and day. You know, Bill Shankly is like the archetype of what people expect from a Liverpool manager, Chris. You know, like the cult of the manager, all the big words, the sound bites, everything about him was an absolute supremo. And then you've got Bob Paisley, who follows him, who's this like really unassuming, really quiet spoken
Bob
guy.
Paisley used to say, "I'll let the football do the talking on the pitch," and that just epitomised everything about Bob Paisley's sides, you know. And you mentioned it there that it was night and day between the two, but Shankly empowers Paisley by giving him the nod as the next manager of Liverpool Football Club. Don't look any further, don't look outside the football club, look inside. We've got managers who are already here and coaches who are already successful that can go on and lead this club, because I've laid the foundations. Now Paisley furthered that. 20 trophies in 9 seasons as Liverpool manager is the most successful spell in English football ever. Yeah. You know, that for me is why he is the greatest of them all. But, you know, Bill Shankly built it all. Bob Paisley just took it even further.
Well, it's crazy, isn't it? Sorry, it's you know, when you look at Shankly, you know, he put the foundations in place, because when you actually look at the honours, he actually didn't win a massive amount with Liverpool, but of course it was the culture at the time and the things he had to change. I mean, 3 league titles, he won the second division as well. He had
could you imagine a manager now winning the championship and 2 years later winning the Premier League? Because that's essentially what Shankly did in 62 and then followed up in 64 winning the first division. And you're thinking, that doesn't happen nowadays. That's how good he was. You know, he didn't have all the money in the world to revamp this side like Newcastle did when they came up, or Fulham, and, you know, they didn't obviously win the titles, but they came up with loads of money and managed to get high up the table. Shankly built this team, built this club, and was able to win the second division and 2 years later the first division.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Sorry, Sam.
No, I was just going to say the thing that Shankly did was to create the footballing philosophy that Paisley was then able to take on. Yeah. And then you go on to Joe Fagan after that as well.
Boot room, wasn't it? There was a name for it.
And I think this whole boot room philosophy is so important to Liverpool. And I think as the years have gone, it's become even more important, because, you know, the club is looking to that to try and recreate something along those lines. It doesn't have to be the boot room again, I think, but, you know, to create that sort of feeling.
Like I say, it comes back to, we've discussed a lot about what Jurgen Klopp could bring to Liverpool, but again, I mentioned there that the cult of the manager, and getting back to having that figure that you look up to, almost going back to square one, because Liverpool are almost in a situation, kind of in terms of the football and the success the team's having, it's almost back to square one again. It's back to what it was.
Pressing the reset button, aren't we?
Yeah. You know, and it's upsetting to some ways to look back and say that has to be done, but you do need a strength of personality, particularly in the modern era. Like, I just think, you know, you can look at what Paisley did, and again, 6 league titles, 3 league cups, 3 European Cups, which is just absolutely out of this world.
Don't forget
And
the UEFA.
And the UEFA Cup as well. And obviously, you got your Charity Shield and what have you on top. But, that level of success is genuinely speaking absolutely unparalleled. But I think in the modern era, he would struggle. He would struggle with everything that's required of a manager outside of the football. Yeah. I think Bill Shankly would be. You look at how Mourinho is absolutely lapped up. Everyone's excited about seeing Jurgen Klopp. I think Bill Shankly would be the perfect figurehead right now. You could slot him right in right now, and he would thrive in the modern game.
Yeah, I think also it's worth looking at both those guys. In the transfer market, and obviously a very different world back then. It wasn't throwing millions around on dozens and dozens of
players that you're signing for Liverpool or else.
But you look at the players that they did sign, and people like Keegan, and then when Keegan goes, but Dalglish comes in.
Graham Souness, Alan Hansen, Craig Johnson, Steve Nicol, these are all players signed by Bob Paisley, and the list goes on. You can look at a 4 or 5 year period and go, he just didn't seem to get it wrong.
Not many Duff signings, and going back before that, people like Phil Neal from Northampton.
Yeah.
These days people don't get signed from Northampton to Liverpool and go on and make however many hundreds of appearances.
No, it's absolutely right.
But even look at Paisley now. I mean, he won the UEFA Cup. We then went on the next season and won the European Cup, and then defended the European Cup the season after that. Yeah. And you're thinking, has anybody done that?
It's mad.
Has anybody actually done that?
I think the funniest thing about it is how everyone goes on about Alex Ferguson and obviously what he did at Man United. And I do often wonder if Paisley had been either come in a few years later or had been a bit more of a mouth, whether he would be, because it's worrying how forgotten he is when people talk about people do absolutely rave about Alex Ferguson, what he achieved at Man United, and look, this isn't the place for it, but let's not give too much credit, but also let's give credit where it's due. Fair play, the people, when the knighthood and everything that Bob Paisley is completely overlooked, and he's English as well. northeastern fella, like there should be more. I think sometimes there should be more made of it. I want to move on it because obviously. But
do you think that Paisley was in part so good because he was there as a player? He understood it all, didn't he? He'd won the league with us. Was it 47? He won the league as a player with Liverpool, and then so he'd won the league. He then was brought up through all the coaching areas of the team, and then was, as I said earlier, he was empowered by Bill Shankly. Do you think he's the manager without that experience? Because was he 55 when he took over as manager of the Football Club? And you're thinking, that wouldn't happen nowadays anyway. You don't go into your first managerial job with all the experience that he had. Yeah. That's something that doesn't happen.
But I think as you were saying, there's a difference between the modern day coach and manager. And you can get some really good coaches today and they go into management and then we never hear of them again because it just doesn't work. And I think actually these days that might well have happened to Paisley because he wouldn't be able to cope with the demands of the manager. I
wonder about the separation, because we saw like Roy Evans having gone through the boot room, exactly the same sort of path, but then again, different era, maybe different egos involved with footballers, and when the money all came into it, was that it was tough for him to separate himself from being the guy who was picking the bibs up the season before to the guy who's all of a sudden completely in charge of it. It's interesting, but the fact that Paisley was able to handle that, there will have been egos, there will have been big egos at Liverpool Football Club, and the fact that he garnered the respect, I think, speaks volumes. Let's talk a few about the other managers, because they're the two standout candidates, but I guess Joe Fagan's not gonna top a lot of people's list, but there's a guy who came in,
European Cup,
exactly, comes in, wins a European Cup, wins the league, wins the League Cup in a very, very short space of time. Man down.
I'll try and sort that out.
I mean, we were saying earlier about Paisley succeeding Shankly.
Yeah,
a difficult job. Well, Fagan has to come in and succeed the both of them. It's an even more difficult job. And he goes on and wins the European Cup. I mean, that's no mean feat.
And then on top of that, what comes next? Kenny Dalglish, thought to be a weight in power in terms of a player, takes the player manager's job, guides Liverpool to the league and cup double, and goes on the 3 league titles in his spell there as well, facing up to a club in crisis off the back of Heysel. Then has to deal with Hillsborough as well, all the while still making himself available to actually be involved on the pitch as well. Arguably the greatest player ever to play for the club, and you know, there's another balance. There's something Paisley never had to balance.
Yeah.
They had to balance the fact that he was the best player at the club at the same time as well.
And I mean, hard to compare teams across different eras, but surely the team that Dalglish built is one of the best ever Liverpool teams.
Absolutely. Well, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, when we were comparing the Barcelona side of 2010, the Invincibles of Arsenal, and the team built in sort of 88, the 88 to 90 period under
What a team.
Absolutely, you know, set the bar for English football in terms of technical dominance. This is really good. I love it. This is great. Isn't the past amazing? And then you move on. Of course, Gerard Houllier kind of was the first guy to redefine what we expect from a manager. You know, a foreign manager coming in with no ties to the club. He taught a little bit in Liverpool.
Yeah.
Which is as good as it got there. But, you know, for our era, the treble that he won when he won the UEFA Cup, the League Cup and the FA Cup, that was my first great memory as a Liverpool fan, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Houllier showed me what European football was all about, because I was born in 82, 84 was, you know, I was far too young to remember it. I'd not seen Liverpool compete on a European scale the way that we did with Houllier in that UEFA Cup run in 2001, and going, you know, playing Barcelona and Roma and teams like that and doing them, and then winning the trophy in the way that we did with that ridiculous game against Alaves. And you're just thinking, but that defined European football for me, and Benitez built on it. Yeah. But Houllier defined that era for me.
Where did it come? Because obviously the Bookazine focuses heavily on the Shankly and Paisley and stuff. Is it hard, you know, it must be hard for those for the later managers, the Houlliers and the Benitez and co, because you can see just from the depth of material in there what a legacy they have to live up to, and that carries forward to any manager subsequently as well.
Yeah, I mean, it must be one of the hardest jobs to come into today, and we're going to talk about Klopp in a bit, because there is this big elephant in the room that is the past, and is Shankly and Paisley and the thing that they built, and how you live up to that is such a difficult thing. I think actually Klopp is just the right sort of person, because he's got this personality and this aura around him.
I think actually what Shankly did well, and why he was such a great manager, was that he tended to let the past inform the future, but worried more about the future, didn't he? And that's almost what Liverpool have to do nowadays. Yeah. You know, we can look at the past, and that's great, and we've won them, but the focus has to be the future. It always has to be the future if you're a manager of Liverpool Football Club, because it's what we're going to win. Yeah,
and I mean, the last guy who absolutely deserves mention as well, gave me personally the greatest moment of my life. I'm not sure my wife would be happy to hear that, or my children in years to come.
Thankfully mine don't watch.
Yeah, but you know, Rafa Benitez, in terms of his trophy haul, you know, few managers in the history of football ever are going to compare to Bob Paisley. But in terms of what he made Liverpool into in that spell between 2005 and 2010, made Liverpool back into a competitive force, back on the European stage, winning the Europa League in the most dramatic of fashions in the Champions League in 2005. Sorry, and then getting back to the final in Athens in 2007, and FA Cup in between. I mean, so you know, where do you think he falls in the pantheon of the Liverpool management?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult, as you say, just because you rate the trophies. But I mean, tactically, you know, with the players he had at his disposal, you know, he didn't always get it right, but to win the Champions League, you know, was an extraordinary achievement.
Absolutely.
And we talk about things that don't happen anymore. That sort of thing doesn't really happen anymore. It's not very long ago, but
no, it's right, isn't it? I think that's it. I think it's the qualification of it, and is that you look at those, and we talk about it like Shankly built the foundations for Paisley, and he took it on, and then you know, it can be difficult to follow in footsteps. Man United are seeing that post Alex Ferguson, of course, but you know, the DNA of a great side was put in place by Shankly, carried on by Paisley, built upon Fagan, Dalglish, and then it tailed off. But you know, Benitez had that put in place from Houllier. But as we say, the players that made it to that side, made it into the side, and were involved in that run to the Champions League final, were not fit to lace the boots of the guys who won the European Cups in years gone by.
This is why Benitez rates so highly for me, is because it was Benitez's tactics that got us that European Cup. And you know, don't get me wrong, Paisley had the players and Shankly had the players, and they had great tactics too, and they signed those players. But it felt like Benitez had more of an influence over that European Cup than any manager's preceded him.
And let's face it, you know, at the end of the Houllier era, that the Liverpool had lost their direction, particularly in the transfer market and what have you. So there were a number of just not stellar players at the football club, and you know, I don't want to disrespect Houllier because again he took a young side. You know, he had a young Steven Gerrard, he had a Robbie Fowler, finally he had Michael Owen in the best years of his career as well, won the European Footballer of the Year. You know. Yeah,
Quite
the
a small
it's small window, but nevertheless, you know, what an exciting team of players he had, and yet, okay, Benitez inherited Steven Gerrard, who was on the way to becoming one of the best players in the world, but still, you know, he inherited a side with you know, distinctly average players who were left over, you know, because Fowler wasn't adequately replaced, you know, Michael Owen was basically gone almost before he walked in the door. He had to build a side of bits and pieces and take them on. So Benitez gets, I think, mass credit for what he achieved with probably the most limited resources of all those guys that we've got in that list.
And
so,
also, I think probably the weight of expectation. As they go through towards the final, Liverpool expects, I guess, when you know, Champions League final. You know, we expect to win it in a perverse way, even though you've kind of a knowledge that realistically really shouldn't win this, but it's Liverpool.
Well, he did,
and even at half time.
Yeah,
well, exactly. But that was the magic of that, and what Benitez brought back was that notion of, and you know, we saw a little bit of that with Brendan Rodgers in 13-14.
Yeah.
Like Liverpool had no right to be there, other than the fact that, you know, we deserve to be there on the merit of the football we've been playing that season and how we've gone about it. But also, you know, you got a guy who dragged us up and dragged us there and got the best out of the people he had available to him and stuff like that, and made us believe in the magic of football again to some extent, because you know there'll be Liverpool fans of an older generation who were just so used to success through the 70s and 80s that, you know, to our generation, you know, Houllier and Benitez in particular, you know, it didn't feel like it was we weren't kind of beholden to the past too much. You know what I mean? We wanted our own success, and we didn't probably deserve it as much because of the way Liverpool were standing in world football. You know, Benitez and Houllier combined took us to Liverpool to the top of the top ranked club in European football in the noughties as well. So all the credit in the world to them. No mentions for Graham Souness in this, unfortunately. No time to mention the likes of Roy Evans, and definitely no time for Roy Hodgson. But let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think is the greatest Liverpool manager of all time? Also, let us know why. Do you think there's a case to be made for some of the latter day managers, the Rafa Benitez, the Gerard Houllier? Who was your favourite manager? Not just, you know, in terms of who you think it stands out as in terms of trophies won, but you as a fan, which manager brought you the most joy as a Liverpool fan? Let us know that in the comments below. Also, don't forget to check out Liverpool, the European Quest. Absolutely phenomenal. As you're going back through the archives, you know, you've got 40 odd years worth of Liverpool content there that still stands up today.
It's just a great story. As much as anything else, it's one of these things where you just start at the beginning and read it through, and as Shankly's building the team and putting the players in place, and then Paisley comes through. Just a really, really great story.
I think we were talking off camera before, sorry, Paul. I just love the way that it's written. You know, you've literally taken articles from 1965, and the way that these people write, it's so different to now. But it's really good to see how it was written, and some, as you say, some absolutely great stories.
Yeah, there's a real charm to some of that. Also.
Well, this is the thing, is that, and I think that's ultimately where it's a little bit different from stuff you might see, is that it's not someone now who wasn't there looking back and writing about the things that happened. These are literally, as I say, pulled from the archives of people who were there, who were living and breathing at the time. And it's great to get that perspective of how it was perceived at the time and how Liverpool perceived as a power at the time. So yeah, definitely go and check it out. We'll put a link in the video information underneath. Do check out the second show. We're going to be bringing it right up to modern day, looking at the challenges Jurgen Klopp's going to have to face to get Liverpool back into this kind of category of brilliance. Cheers. Now we're bringing it right up to the modern day. Jurgen Klopp is the Liverpool manager, and we want to know what he's got to do to get Liverpool back to the pinnacle, not just of English football, but of European football as well.